My name's Eric Lazarus, and I'd like to ask, I'm asking the first question. First, I want to just congratulate first Lori on, as far as I know, nobody recognizes innovative election officials who stick their neck out to try something new and teach us all something. Election officials are in the unfortunate position of only potentially looking bad if the polls don't open on time or close earlier. There's almost no way for them to look good. It's a terrible situation, and Lori and her foundation and Threshold are to be congratulated. There needs to be more recognition of excellence of election officials. I'm interested in the whole panel's, and congratulations to the winners for actually doing work. My first question is, you folks have had a very important and interesting experience in doing this really remarkable thing. What do you folks think you learned about what new laws and regulations should be put in effect in California and in other states based on your experiences? If that's a good question, otherwise go on.
Yeah, no, let me address that a little bit. Before we started running the Transparency Project, a group of us went to Sacramento and presented our proposal to the Secretary of State Boland. And while there was not really a legal opportunity for her to endorse it, she appeared to be and expressed that she was very impressed with it and was willing to give it a try. And I remember a part of the conversation was, who's going to sue you over that? But we did learn from this that there are areas of the law in California, more so elsewhere, I think, that do need to be looked at. For example, California law states that the containers, the sealed containers of ballots that come back from each of the polling places shall not be opened, except for the official canvass, unless the election official has reason to suspect that there may be something wrong. I was wrestling with that a lot. Unless I suspect that there may be something wrong. And Kevin, I believe, talked to David Dill from Stanford about it. Dr. Dill said, damn right you have reason to suspect there's something wrong. And I'll sign an affidavit to that effect. So there's a very specific procedure that we need to go through to establish that. And I think that part ought to be easier. Also, it should be made clear that when we say publish the ballots, we don't have the bandwidth in Humboldt County to put them out on the internet and allow for anybody to look at them, to use them. So there is a bit of virtual obscurity in the fact that if you write to me, I will send you a set of DVDs. So what we have learned is more audits are good. The legislature needs to work with elections officials to make audits easier. Audits of every kind, as it is the official canvass, requires that we count 1%, hand count 1% of the votes. That means to heck with the other 99%. It just seems like not. We have always done more than 1% in Humboldt County, at least since I've been there, and I think before that as well. But the biggest lesson, I think, is that the public appreciates it, those that know about it, and they have, taken the opportunity. A few people, only a few, have actually taken the opportunity to view it. But knowing that it's out there, that I can go look at the ballots, and the idea of the Transparency Project in the beginning was to make those images available, and Mr. Voter, count them any way you want. If that means to turn on your computer and say, okay, I'm going to look just at the district attorney's race, there's one for Paul, there's one for Allison, next ballot, there's one for them, next ballot, one for them, and do it any way you want. If you are as sophisticated as Mitch, it's a little walk in the park. But even for me, who I do not have that level of training, I can use Mitch's program. I'm not the one that could add in this feature or that feature, but when I recognize those and talk to Mitch about it, something can be done about it. So we need the help of the legislature to assure voters that while their vote is confidential, it is a secret ballot. After that vote is put in the box with 200 others and sorted and sifted as many times as it takes for poll workers to understand how many pieces of paper there are in this box that belong to this precinct, or this precinct, they're not in order anymore. Unless there is some identifying mark on there, you would not be able to, well, I shouldn't say that. Perhaps if it was a ballot that had one yes or no vote on it, or a small series, anybody could probably remember exactly how they voted. But if you asked me how I voted on some proposition 2 years ago, I couldn't tell you. But I could probably go find it. So what did you learn?
Did Tom want to take a stab at the learning process?
Great.
Yeah, Kevin, why don't you come down forward at least, and
Bring a
we'll
chair.
get you a
Bring
chair
another
up
chair.
here.
Yeah, I'll share a mic with him. Looky here.
Oh, wow.
You're official.
Am I supposed to answer the question? No.
Yeah.
Press the button on.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
it's
you're
not
on.
pressed.
You're on.
Okay.
Well, what I would like to see changed, I would like to see the laws clarified. I would actually like to see every jurisdiction conduct parallel counts using separate equipment. I'd like to see elections in other jurisdictions where I can say, at least in Humboldt County, I know our votes count. I know that fraud is going to be detected. Or I'll say that fraud will always be attempted, but I think in Humboldt County it's probably the least likely jurisdiction in the country right now. I would like to think that when my vote for whatever candidate is against another candidate that I didn't vote for, that doesn't go in the same bag as a county where fraud is taking place, and it could be detected if they were to utilize SIMR methodology. And it's such a simple methodology, it's inexpensive. It's very simple conceptually to the voters. I mean, I'd like to see it happen everywhere. Yeah. I mean, the fact that it wasn't, as Mitch pointed out, it wasn't the very first election, but it was really the first functional election where Mitch's program was operational, and we find 200 ballots go missing. A glitch. And unlike Carolyn and Mitch, I wasn't totally surprised. I guess my studies were in history, and I think that election fraud is just as natural as embezzlement in banking. It's a similar temptation, and the rewards are great. So I think Deck Zeros could have been going missing since Diebold engineered that software in 1996, 94. They didn't put that first email out. It was 3 or 4 years before Carolyn.
I think it was 98. I could be wrong.
But I mean, the email didn't go out till 2000 and,
I'm not sure.
yeah, no, you're right. It was probably about 98.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not
So,
sure.
but how long and in what other jurisdictions did that take place where deck zeros went missing?
So Tom, do you want to say some things?
I was going to add some of the things that, we're relatively new to this. This is just the second election that we.
No, green button.
Hello?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, you
Speak
can't
right
talk,
into
yeah, you have to speak
Okay.
into it.
This is just our second election using this. And we're running into a lot of the same problems that Carolyn has in terms of the legalities and figuring out how to work through that. And we don't have the benefit of having had Mitch and Kevin and them coming to us and saying, we're going to do this for you. And so I've had to find ways in the margins to get it done. This is just one aspect of how we've been looking at how to improve audits. We've also been working with Phil Stark at Berkeley on limited size audits, the statistical audits, and some of the other ideas. I like this because one of the things I tell people, if I'm going to talk to somebody about improving the election process, I need to explain it to the little old lady that's on the grand jury in 5-word sentences in one paragraph. And say, this is why it tells us that it worked. And totally setting all of that aside, with all of the problems in certifying new election systems, the whole idea of new software as auditing solutions allows us to push the boundaries of what an election system can do. Because it doesn't have to go through a certification process. We can scan ballots, tabulate them, do other things with them in software that can be open source and nobody can complain about it not being certified.
Yeah, I'd like to say a word about the certification, because I think it's a classic case of good intentions gone awry. Well, when I was in YOLO for the first time, I remember the situation where you were pleasantly surprised as we were scanning things that you didn't have to go back to the beginning of a batch when there was a double feed. And I said, but we're using the exact same drivers. I mean, Tom had gotten the system. Tom had gotten the commercial system to be working, and we were using and I thought we were using the exact same software drivers. And then Tom indicated, no, when this is running on the Hart system, it has to use older drivers that don't have these fixes in it because it's been certified. And to incorporate any improvement would mean going through certification again. So which is a very expensive process. So what vendor in their right mind is going to try to push out bug fixes? Things like that probably explain why Diebold's solution to the Deck Zero problem was a memo instead of just fixing it. They didn't want to lose the $500,000 for recertifying. So if certification worked, if certification ensured that you didn't have problems like there were in Diebold's system, then maybe there'd be an argument for it. But I think what we've seen is that certification is letting systems through anyway that don't work, and it's preventing people from fixing them, and it's preventing innovation from taking place.
The one thing I would add on the certification is I was just reading a discussion this afternoon where they discussed that the last standards that they can certify to is 2005.
Right.
And they can't certify to that at a federal level anymore, and they don't have any follow-up standards yet. So literally there's nothing has been certified in the last 5 years, and there's nothing that can be certified right now. So everything that's broken right now is broken for the near to long-term future.
I don't know if you're taking questions. Well, we were taking these questions first, but, yeah, I'd like to say, there's a question here. Was Elaine Chenault or anyone from Marin County notified about this event? If so, what was their response? Elaine Genold was called and notified, and she did not respond. She's our registrar of voters. There are some other questions we'll need to go to other people. I just want to say for myself, three things that I learned about Marin County. I was really sad when I learned that Marin County was counted by Diebold systems, and I have always admired and loved being a Marin resident and viewed it as a highly educated county, and I got my absentee ballot as soon as I could, so I could make sure I had paper, and I was smart enough to know to deliver it to the precinct rather than, on election day, rather than the mail. But I learned other things, which was that the the vote by mail system had been originally designed by Global Election Systems, this guy named John Dean, who was hired out of prison by his brother, Jeffrey Dean, with 27 counts of felony for computer fraud, and had designed a system of stealing as an accountant with 2 sets of books. And, this, I never really liked this, and
26 counts I would have been okay with. Put over the top.
And so I have noticed that a lot of our biggest challenges in Marin have actually been in our absentee ballot counting, and we're still going to try to improve it. And what I would love to see is something like Mitch's system brought in as a second counting that would meet my need for trust and safety. Another thing that I didn't like is, as I think I mentioned to you, I had the GEMS software downloaded on my computer. Well, actually, in the tabulator in Marin County, which gets the votes get counted, there's sometimes just one person present, Tony Aquilane, and it is possible to put the election results on a thumb drive, take it home, change it. Just possible. I'm not saying he's doing it or anything. Change it, put it back in, and not have it easily traceable. And so I would really like to see some improvements in our election system here in Marin County. And how many here are, I was going to ask, how many of you here vote in Marin County? Okay. And then the second question, how many of you here are surprised to hear what I'm telling you? Okay, all right. Well, it's going to take citizens making requests and speaking up and doing kind of like what Kevin Collins did, and really both hearing the concerns of the registrar, and Eric has taken some time with that, which I'm glad already, thank God, and then also citizen interest, and I really want to invite you to that. And another piece is that recounts are very expensive, as you mentioned, and one person had a questionable vote of just losing by a few votes in Fairfax, in the town of Fairfax, and he was going to be charged $44,000 for a recount, just in Fairfax alone. So, I mean, when some of these county jobs are just a stipend of $300 a month or something like that, this does not work. And so, I'd like to bring some reality to our system, and I'm so appreciative of Mitch's system, because if you have a dual counting system, even though it can be tampered with, it's at least better. And so I just wanted to add that little piece.
If anybody does, contact Elaine and other people in the election administration here in Marin, while asking them to do innovative stuff is great, you might want to recognize that they have agreed to do some experimental innovative stuff along with Stanford University and Berkeley and stuff. So they should be also encouraged and thanked for the innovative experimentation with better kinds of auditing that they are looking at.
And speaking of invitations, I was impressed by the show of hands of Marin, voters in the audience, and I would like to remind you that tomorrow morning at 9:30 to 11:30, the Election Advisory Committee is meeting at the Civic Center in room 324A. And if you feel so inclined and want to show up and make a public comment, hint, hint, in support of this project that you just saw the demo and what you think about it, you're more than welcome. The advisory committee meets the third Friday of every morning. And one quick comment on what Kevin said about the election laws needing to be clarified. I mean, amen to that. They're so ambiguous, don't cover what counts in what really matters. And one lesson to take away from this project is that in California, the law needs to be changed so that voted ballots are public record. That would be number one in California.
In the process of trying to discover whether what we were doing was legal, I did read the Public Records Act in California. And it does mention various voting materials that are not public, but those do not include the ballots. So I think it was one of the other arguments I felt that we had in our corner is that it was not specifically excluded from the public records. And there in the Public Records Act is basically, if it's not excluded here, it is a public record. And I think it is the fundamental document of a democracy is the ballot, and it should be a public document. And
Yeah, it's the fundamental witness to the election, you're right, but this is where the local ROV has incredible discretion. Whenever there's something ambiguous in the law or the law isn't covered, they decide what is the law.
well, I would like to see it specifically included or stated, but it's not excluded.
May I just offer up, as I was speaking to some people before this session began, for anyone else here who may consider themselves an election integrity advocate, there is a difference in the administrative latitude between the appointed registrar of voters and the elected registrar of voters. And I would suggest to you that it may be, you may find it easier to converse with the elected registrar of voters. Because while I, as an elected registrar of voters, have the discretion to say, yes, Kevin Collins, come into my office. And yes, Mitch Trachtenberg, let's try that. To the appointed registrar, which I believe yours is here in Marin County, a huge part of their job is to please 5 people every Tuesday. And one thing that pleases those 5 people is dollar signs with very small numbers. So the more expense that, or the more they see this as an expense to their department, and I'm not speaking of Elaine, she has expressed to me that she is interested in bringing about a new level of integrity to the elections in Marin County. But please understand that she is under the same pressure that every appointed registrar of voters would feel. And that is not, that's one of the few things that are not in common with elected and appointed registrars of voters.
Who are the 5 people? Oh, okay.
Your Board of
Thank you.
Supervisors.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. That generally is who makes that appointment in those counties where it is appointed.
Gone through the questions on that list?
No, but I noticed that gentleman raised his.
I'm Marco Star, I'm here from Sacramento. My question is, are we saving money by doing this? And kind of like, I got it a little bit late, I'm sorry. And it seems like there's a statistical probability of recount that having the second system in place has got to be much cheaper. I mean, I think 41,000 by
Yes.
an election in San Diego County. We just wanted such an extortion amount of money that, so, did you save money? Could you save money? Could you quantify that? Could that be part of what you get an award for tonight? Is saving money, which is, I think, sexy.
Oh, well, since I'm the one responsible for saving money, There is some small expense involved in having the people there and using the county's equipment to do the scan and having the electricity on and so on. But in Humboldt County, until this election, this was on a totally volunteer basis. I had to approve of those volunteers. I wasn't taking anybody off the street because I'm responsible for those records and I want to know who's touching them. But the savings came not to the county, but to those candidates who were able to say, gosh, I only lost by 14 ballots. Am I going to spend a few $1,000s? I'm talking about a small hospital district in southern Humboldt County. Am I going to spend a few $1,000s to do that? Had it been a city council race in the city of Eureka, it probably would have been $10,000 or something, at least. So the money that's saved is not only in I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I am highly confident that the information that I put out as final election results is accurate. And for those who may have reason or hope that they are inaccurate, I want you to go take a look at them and count them any way you can. So the savings there is actually to the candidate in a very tight race who has some other option besides just $44,000. Wow.
I've tried to be so moderate tonight, and I'll let myself go immoderate for just a moment. We're willing to pay a lot of money for the arsenal of democracy. We're willing to pay a lot for each F-15. And the reason we do that is to defend our system of government, to defend our democracy. And we ought to be willing to pay whatever it takes to make sure that the elections are accurate and are ensuring that the winner is the person who takes office. It's unfortunate.
But actually, you're right. There's a practice here in California. Sadly, many states don't even have it, where there is a small fraction of the ballots that are presumably picked at random and checked. Often either whole machines or whole precincts are counted. It's a pretty expensive process, very by hand process, and it's not very observable. So it doesn't really work very well to prove to anyone that this check is a good check on the machines. A process very similar to this one, which Elaine Ganold has agreed to support our doing, along with this fellow Philip Stark at Berkeley, might actually turn out to be a lot cheaper and far more certain process than the process it would replace. So if this technology or similar technology were used in a certain mode, and then it were legally allowed to stop using this very hard to observe manual hand count process to replace this, then there probably are good dollars to be saved on every election moving forward, and we'll be doing a study of that, and we'll be able to have real numbers, hopefully, about a year and a half from now.
I'm going to jump in for the first time here. Yes, it can save money for the county in other ways. I've just gotten back from doing an investigation which resulted in litigation in Memphis, Tennessee. And one of the things that triggered that was that there was a very popular, quite wonderful judge who was displaced by a person who is quite clearly, to most of the public, very unqualified in every way. If some of you are familiar with the Alvin Green case in South Carolina, it was a situation kind of like that where everybody on every side was just flummoxed as to how this could have happened. $46,000 worth of litigation later, we finally obtained the hard drives, and almost immediately in looking at those, we saw that there had been a coding error such that when they tried, and this was an honest mistake or an incompetent mistake maybe, but they were trying to change the ballot order before the election because their name was in the wrong spot and they didn't do it right. And indeed, votes were being allocated on paper ballots and on touch screens to the wrong candidate. Now, if they had the system that they're using in Humboldt County, I can guarantee that instead of us being 3 months, this was an August election, 5 months later, and $46,000 worth of legal fees, and now it's on appeal, which will be another bunch and probably result in a new trial, they probably would have found that the votes went to the wrong candidate in about, 3-4 days, and it wouldn't cost nearly as much as it cost the county to defend this in litigation.
I just want to say, as part of this election, when Mitch approached me, that it was getting they were getting hard up for the volunteers that they had used. I was able, out of the grant, to allot about $3,000, and the workers would be being paid about $10 an hour to load in ballots. And there were a lot of people who were very eager, and young people that were very eager to have a chance to make a little money and work on their democracy. And it made me feel good, and it seemed so reasonable compared to the millions and millions of dollars that are spent on our election, mostly on advertising, each time.
Could I just throw in my thanks for that? And I think Kevin, probably even more so
Even
than
more
me.
so, yeah, because it made it possible for me to do what I do for a living and not have to be there scanning ballots. And when you look at the cost, like you say, total cost of this project in Humboldt County was about $20,000 at the time for the scanner. And that's been operational
One
now.
time, though.
That was a one-time cost, and
that
it was...
that's a piece of office equipment that's used for other functions. It's an off-the-shelf piece of office equipment that's used as we scan our affidavits of registration as well.
Right, and
it's
then-
not solely committed to this.
And then this was a general election compared to some of our smaller UDEL elections, and it came in under $3,000.
Yes, that's
It's
right,
just
under,
phenomenally, I mean, that probably is half the monthly licensing fee with any of the current vendors, just to own the equipment.
Wow.
But even more than Lori's contribution to help us recruit people to do our scanning with us, the fact that someone has put their resources and their heart behind this project may be something that I don't know. We've been doing it for a while now. Is there anybody here that this is the first time you've heard of the Humboldt Election Transparency Project? Yeah, see? And it's this lady that brought us together, that brought us here. And I hope, too, that you will be, the seeds that go out from this and share it with your county or with other registrars throughout the state, hopefully throughout the country. Many of them know about it. Many of them appreciate it, but they don't have quite the impetus that it takes to, pinch their nose and jump in the deep end of the pool. Water's fine. Come on in.
I just want to, I want to say something about that and about seeds. I want you to know that we have contacted a number of other counties, and we're beginning to build a group that is interested. They haven't had their demonstrations yet, but we're persistently going along, and that includes Yuba County, Glenn County, Santa Cruz County, big time Santa Cruz County, San Francisco County, even Dean Logan in Los Angeles County, and Santa Clara County. So, when we get a certain group of people and they're going to the Conference for Election Officials, CAECO, at some point this is going to make a difference, and all it does is it takes interest from the public. It takes continuing to educate people, and yes, you can really spread the word. And one person wrote a question saying they asked their local election department about this project and they're not interested, said everything was just fine. I can understand the frustration with that, and I would like to still empower you to go forward because you will create a difference. It's just, it takes time, that's all.
I was going to say something that actually feeds into. A large part of the cost of doing audits is discovering that you have to change the way you do your elections, and that can add cost. That's a lot of what got me into working with this and also working with Phil is nobody in my county is as skeptical of what we get on election night as I am. And I want better tools to be able to figure out what's working and what doesn't. And changing what you do to make sure it works can be more expensive than any audit is.
Oh. You have to come forward and speak a little louder.
You could set up booths to garner public interest at festivals and at farmers markets, but at festivals there are thousands of people, and consciousness is at a place where people get that we've been had several times. And if there's an easy way to understand a new system and then get behind it, the transparency and the sunlight will shine. From Florida all the way to Marin County.
Yeah, I believe persistence is the way, and also enjoying and celebrating each time we get somewhere with this, you know. And I also want to let you know that there are other things to be considered important, which we haven't discussed too much in this particular one. The double counting is good, but also another whole topic which our committee, evaluation committee, will look at even more fully the next time is who's good at chain of custody, which registrars really keep careful management of the ballots and the protection of them. And, you know, that's just one example. And who is really sincere about observer access and who is just giving lip service to that or perhaps even denying it. These things are you know, the observer access is officially written into our laws here in California, but I have learned of many situations where there's a lot of resistance.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all.
Two things to add. One, in terms of chain of custody, one way that the system could be used is right at the precincts, and we haven't experimented with that yet. But you know, it would be another task for the precinct people to do at the end of the night. Just run them through a separate. Yes, that would still be a problem. But in terms of precinct ballots, you could run them through right at the precinct, build a DVD, drop the DVD into the nearest mailbox, and that gives you a record from before there's any chain of custody issues. So that's one thing. The other is diplomacy is really important in this field. One of the things that I think was responsible for our success was that we were all working with a registrar who was anxious to work with us, and we were all anxious to work with her. You know, we were not trying to make her life miserable, and we were not trying to call fraud. And if you're trying to work with a registrar, it's really helpful to have a good working relationship with them. So just even if you think there might be fraud going on someplace, maybe that's not the best way to approach someone.
Definitely not. Yeah, I mean, I've trained in nonviolent communication, and I'm a teacher of communications that supports empathy practices. I can't tell you how much empathy has been important to bring this forward. And you know, with my own registrar here, Elaine Genold, you know, she's been really concerned about maybe about the cost one. I didn't hear about that, but also about, you know, maybe something's going to not look right. with if we use this system and something will show up and so the idea of doing a little sample one sounds great to me and would meet her need for safety and security. So we have time to answer other questions later, and we're going to do an award process, but I want you to know we have delicious food. It's beyond refreshments. I didn't want to advertise that. And it's all there in the back, and this is our half hour that we want to have for eating and networking. And, I want to welcome a break and encourage you to stay for the last part after you have a delicious meal. And continue with our little party here and be here for their awards. So thank you.